This episode of Military Matters is brought to you by Stars and Stripes. Stars and Stripes provides independent news and information to the U.S. military community, including active duty service members, DoD civilians, veterans, contractors, and their families. Unique among Department of Defense authorized news outlets, Stars and Stripes is governed by the principles of the First Amendment. No slants, no agendas, just the news. Go to stripes.com and see the difference for yourself. That's stripes.com. Use promo code PODCAST. Get 50% off your digital subscription. Use promo code PODCAST. Get 50% off your digital subscription. Go to stripes.com now. This episode is also brought to you by International Auto Logistics. Go to PCSMyPOV.com to get all of the information you'll need on storing and picking up your vehicle. Or check out the just launched IAL mobile app. Just search for PCSMyPOV in the Apple Store or on Google Play. Worldwide, there have been over 3 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 225,000 deaths. In the U.S. alone, as of this recording, there have been over 1 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 61,354 deaths. The numbers are both staggering and frightening. In this episode, we want to talk about another number, 123,000. That's the number of people in the U.S. who have survived this ordeal. COVID-19 is deadly, we all know that, but what's it like to contract this disease and to live through it? We talk with a U.S. Air Force veteran who's beating the disease, but at a cost.
We'll also be talking about the life-saving machine that has become a political lightning rod, the ventilator. You've heard about the machine in the news and probably have heard about how few we have, how badly they're needed, and some folks have even said we don't need as many of them as we think. But what is a ventilator? What does it do, and how is it used to treat patients with COVID-19? We talked to a nurse with over 30 years of experience in the healthcare industry, but she would only talk with us under the condition of anonymity, and you'll hear why.
And finally, we talk ventilators with an Air Force veteran whose company developed an innovative new ventilator, answering the Army's industry challenge. Can this potential new approach save lives? I'm Rod Rodriguez.
I'm Desmon Farris.
This is Military Matters.
By now, most of us have seen news segments, social media videos, and even podcasts that talk to the devastating effects of COVID-19. And it's awful, no doubt about that. But more than 100,000 people in the U.S. have recovered from this disease.
That doesn't mean that those who have recovered bounce back to normal. There's a prevailing theme here when we talk about COVID-19, and it's that it's different for everyone. There are lots of factors that affect how a person will react to the disease. Two people can get it together, but one might need hospitalization while the other only needs a little bed rest. So what does this disease look like if you get it? What can someone who's contracted COVID-19 expect if they're admitted to a hospital?
Air Force retired Command Chief Master Sergeant Juan Lewis, known as the Fired Up Chief, has been receiving treatment since last month after being diagnosed with COVID-19.
No, it's unfortunate. I can't trace all the way back to how I got infected. But I want to tell you something. Like every morning I wake up, I run like 5 miles. And I run 5 miles and go by Starbucks. Then I'm fired up to go to work. But one morning I ran my 5 miles. I was 3 minutes slower than my normal 5 mile time. And I was wondering, like, why am I so slow? You know, I'm looking at my watch. I'm thinking my watch was broke. And, you know, I was breathing a little bit hard, but I still didn't think nothing was wrong.
Chief Lewis didn't think too much of his fatigue and slower run times until his wife pointed out that he was moving around generally a little slower, and then came a fever and a dry cough.
So I'm just thinking, hey, I just probably got like the cold or whatever else. And so, you know, I'm trying to self-medicate, and my condition kept getting worse.
He decided to call his doctor and asked what he should do. His doctor recommended self-isolation in order to prevent the spread of the disease. Now, for a lot of folks, this is literally the end of their COVID-19 story. They go into isolation, take some medication for their symptoms, and about 14 days later, they reemerge no worse for wear. Except, like we said, that's not always the case.
And then I'm sweating really bad at night. And then one day my wife was like, hey, you just need to go to the emergency room.
So they go to the emergency room.
I was kind of scared, to be honest with you. I was kind of thinking like, I'm the fired up chief, man. I'm like hurt. I'm like Superman. Like, ain't nothing gonna get me down or whatever. And so I was kind of thinking, maybe I don't have it. Maybe I go there and just tell me I got the flu, I got a cold or something like that. And maybe they just give me a shot and like send me home and then I'll be all right.
Unfortunately, it wasn't just the flu. It would be low oxygen levels in his blood that would prompt his admission to the ICU, and then the diagnosis of COVID-19. What came next was what makes this disease so frightening.
It just take over your whole body. So, you know what? I can't really describe the pain to you because I never felt it before. But if you can imagine, like, you don't have no energy to do anything, and then it's like just weighing on you from headaches to like chills to like fevers and anything you can think of. And the only thing they did in the ICU, they was trying to control like your fevers and trying to give you some pain medication. But this thing really had you, and it was really playing a number on your mind. And I don't know if it was the drugs, I don't know if it was COVID, but like the hallucination, man. I'm laying inside the bed, it's like the bed just dancing all the way around. And then it's like, it's all inside your mind. You going from like when you was like young to every base you ever been stationed at, all these significant emotional events that happened that occurred inside your life, you reflecting back on that.
What Chief Master Sergeant Lewis is describing is the pain and lack of energy many others have described who were also sick with COVID-19. This disease makes getting oxygen into your blood difficult. It makes breathing difficult. Everything hurts.
I'm laying up there inside that bed. I remember one night it was so bad. And now I tell you, if you ever know somebody get COVID, they better keep a positive attitude. They better fight and they better not give up. But that drug, that disease, that virus, it'll put it on you so bad. It wants you to lay on your back. It don't want you to do anything. And it make all kind of negative thoughts go through your head. When I was laying up there, I'm a very positive person. That drug had me begging the Lord to go out there and kill me. I'm like, Lord, just go ahead and take me. I can't take this pain no more. And I can remember there. And like the power of prayer, the power of support. And I'm looking at my message. You look on your phone. Good thing they had phones. If I probably wouldn't have had my phone, I would probably just gave up and just call it quits.
There isn't much that doctors can do for patients suffering from the disease. There's no cure, no antibiotics, nothing to combat the virus itself. All they can do is treat the symptoms with the very drugs that were causing the chief hallucinations. But he also received a much-needed piece of advice from his doctor.
She really saved my life. And she basically told me, there's no drug out there for COVID. She said, the only thing you can do, you got to fight, you got to keep a positive attitude, and you can't give up. Because the only drug they do is just try to keep you comfortable. But you ain't no drugs up there for it.
Anyone that knows or follows the chief refers to him as the fired up chief. So having a positive attitude and mindset was exactly what the doctor ordered, and exactly what the chief was bringing to the fight.
I think your mindset right there do a lot to your body, and kind of encourage you to go out there and heal. I could have been a Debbie Downer. I could have been, just paying pity on myself, why me or whatever. But I think that would have made my situation even worse. And also, too, I think what really helped me, too, what the doctor told me, she told me that if I didn't exercise every morning, that, I wouldn't be talking to her right now. She had me down inside the morgue. And like those mornings that I used to get up and do those 5 miles in the rain and the snow, in the high wind condition right there, people used to say I was crazy for going out there doing that. But they didn't realize that I was preparing for a challenge that I was going to be faced with inside the future. And so all those early morning runs out there, getting wet in the wind, in the cold, and all those different conditions, I think that really helped me overcome this significant emotional event that I'm going through right now.
Mental resilience and living an active lifestyle played a critical role in the recovery of the fired-up chief. Without it, he's pretty sure he wouldn't have made it through the ordeal. He entered the world of COVID-19 healthy and mentally strong from years of pushing and challenging himself. So when push came to shove, he could shove back.
I'm kind of glad it happened to me because all they're going to do is make me stronger, make me a better person, make me go out there and look at things a lot different. And I can tell you, I'm like laser focused on inside there now. And the Lord gave me another opportunity to keep living. And so I'm very appreciative to it too.
The fired up chief is currently recovering from the damage done to his body from the virus. Although his wife was also diagnosed with COVID-19, she didn't experience an illness like he did. In fact, she recovered fairly quickly and without hospitalization. But for the fired up chief, recovery is going to be a long road.
You know what? I never hit the norm again because that virus, it did a number, man. It did a number on my lungs right there. And so first, I got to figure out how I can go out there and recover some of my lungs capacity. And sometimes it's kind of frustrating that, from an individual who used to be able to run 5 miles every day run up a hill, and now I can't even walk up a little bitty hill without gasping and getting winded for air over there. And so, like, for me, going back to the new norm, I would never be able to go back to the old norm. So I got to establish like a new norm. But you know what? Every significant emotional event you go to, it's an opportunity for you to get better.
As of this recording, several states are considering plans to reopen for business, to get folks back to work and find a new normal for society. But many experts warn that if we don't continue our preventative measures as we reopen the country, that a new resurgence of this virus could happen, meaning a lot more people could get sick. The fired up chief has some advice for anyone else who might have to endure COVID-19.
If I had any advice, I'd tell them that to make sure that they stay positive and make sure that they continue to fight and make sure they don't give up. And I would want to tell people that know someone that's going through it, man, just continue to support them, send them a message, send them encouragement, send them some motivation, because that right there worked. And, we always say, like, the military have a suicide problem. And if everybody was to motivate anyone who's going through an issue the way they motivate me, that let them know that people care about them and that encourage them to continue to fight.
During our interview, something that Chief Master Sergeant Lewis said caught my attention.
And I remember, too, they said 9 out of 10 patients that go in the ICU have to go in the ventilator. And I remember my old boss, Colonel Nunn, an Army guy like you, hero. Colonel Nunn had sent me a text that, Luke, don't let them put you on the ventilator. I remember he telling me that. I had another doctor. That's all he kept talking about. Hey, your oxygen level going so low. We may have to put you on the ventilator. We may have to put you on the ventilator. I was like, no, I don't want to go on the ventilator. I don't want to go on the ventilator, because I was starting that fight now inside there.
I was curious why his friend would tell him not to allow them to use a ventilator on him. At first, he didn't know either. But the longer he stayed in the hospital, the more he understood why his friend sent him that one urgent text message.
I learned on like the hospital that I was in, 9 out of 10 people go to ICU, go on the ventilator. And I learned that if you go on that ventilator, I learned they do have a lot of different negative effects on your body. And I learned, like, a lot of people who hit that ventilator too, they, instead of coming out, being rolled out on a gurney, they rolled out, in a body bag.
After the break, we talked to a nurse about what you need to know about ventilators. Then later, we talked to an Air Force vet whose company might hold the key to the future of affordable and safe ventilators. All that when we return.
This episode of Military Matters is brought to you by Stars and Stripes. Stars and Stripes provides independent news and information to the U.S. military community, including active duty service members, DoD civilians, veterans, contractors, and their families. Unique among Department of Defense authorized news outlets, Stars and Stripes is governed by the principles of the First Amendment. No slants, no agendas, just the news.
Use promo code podcast and save 50% on your digital subscription.
Go to stripes.com and see the difference for yourself. That's stripes.com.
When your orders come in and it's time to make a plan to move or store your personally owned vehicle, International Auto Logistics is here as the #1 resource for U.S. service members' POV needs. Just use their website to get started at www.pcsmypov.com to get all of the information you'll need on storing and picking up your vehicle. Or check out the just launched IAL mobile app. Just search for PCS My POV in the Apple Store or on Google Play.
Being a health professional right now is to serve on the front lines of a war. That war, like most wars, carries with it lots of controversy and political landmines. that have already destroyed more than one career. That's why when we went looking for a medical expert to explain even what a ventilator is, we were hard-pressed to find anyone who was willing to talk with us on the record.
It's not hard to see why. When the President of the United States and state governors are having public disputes about ventilators, the discussion goes from one of public health to being a political lightning rod. We eventually did find someone who would talk with us for this podcast, but she would only do so if we didn't use her real name or where she worked. She was very concerned that she could lose her job, and I can tell you that fear of reprisal is very real. So to help us tell her side of the story, I'm happy to introduce to you our voice actress, Carrie Rodriguez, who will serve as the voice of our nurse. To keep things simple, we'll just call her Nurse Carrie. Nurse Carrie has been a nurse for over 30 years and has worked in the healthcare industry in different roles, her longest being in emergency medicine. She's also worked as a nursing educator, a simulation instructor, and an integrative medicine focusing on chronic and terminal pain issues.
Currently, my job is to oversee a team of 22 clinicians that work out in the field visiting patients in their homes. I have physical therapists, occupational therapists, and registered nurses who venture out into the city seeing patients who were recently discharged from the hospital to make sure that they understand how to live in their homes again and not get readmitted back into the hospital. And now it's with a new twist in the world of the pandemic. We have to be cautious and understand that it's likely our patients have had exposure to COVID while they were in the hospital in one way or another.
Nurse Carrie has been there since the very start of this pandemic, watching it all unfold as the public and elected officials at first dismissed much of what the medical professionals were warning as a serious threat to public health, then witnessing a scramble to get those same professionals the equipment they so desperately needed and didn't have. She's also seen the public itself react to the isolation measures encouraged by public officials, and overall, she's not too happy.
There's a percentage of our population who doesn't seem to give a crap. They think that they should be entitled and be able to go out and do whatever they want, wherever they want, around whoever they want. And to me, that's super disrespectful for those of us who are trying to protect them. And we, put ourselves at risk every day, and people out there are nonchalant, and it totally negates, all that work that we're doing and try to help the community and help each other when they're out there exposing themselves around everybody. That's just super disrespectful, and I don't appreciate it.
But she's also seen the flip side to that coin. She's seen folks come together to support each other.
The flip side of the coin is there are so many different community branches out there reaching out to help all these central workers, not just us that are healthcare workers. Of course, we're on the front line, but there's so many other essential people out there, truck drivers and everything. Everyone putting themselves out there and knowing that around any corner you could be put in harm's way, mostly because of those people who have no respect for the protective measures that are out there that everyone should be abiding by.
This is the first time in recent history in the United States that a disease has caused this level of disruption to our lives. Many Americans like myself, maybe even you, weren't aware of what an N95 mask was or the difference between a ventilator and a respirator. I had no sooner said the word ventilator when...
Let me stop you for a second, and I'm going to give you a little metaphor about ventilators. They're almost the healthcare's version of the public's toilet paper because of politics. One of the reasons I'm saying that is because there's so many things unknown about this disease that we in the healthcare field knew that our respiratory system was going to get attacked if we get this. And our only hope to keep people maybe stabilized for a while to try and work through the disease process was to put them on a ventilator. But that was without really knowing the ramifications of that and the availability of ventilators and the extent of the disease and how it's going to affect different segments of the population. And being on a ventilator, is that going to be worse than maybe going into hospice? There's just so many different variables involved in it.
Before we get too far, let's talk about what exactly is a ventilator.
Essentially, a ventilator measures pressures in your lungs and measures oxygen levels, and it breathes for you. To do that, they have to put you under sedation because you can't stand having an endotracheal tube in your lungs if you're awake. It's not at all comfortable.
A few weeks back, we did a special coronavirus episode. At the time we recorded that, there was no self-isolation measures, states were open for business, and during that interview, Dr. Kamal Khalsi said that there was an estimated 100,000 ventilators in the U.S. and that we would probably need 300,000 more. The country has rushed to meet that demand, so we should be good if there's enough ventilators to go around, right?
Over time, what I've seen is that the ventilators, and this is not over a long period of time, over the first few weeks, that they were not all they're cracked up to be, but they're still being sought after. The ventilators are doing their job, but they're not providing the benefits that they thought they would. I have friends that work in the COVID units and see the ramifications of the folks, and most of them, when they come off the ventilator, they're in a coma. They're not going to come back out of it, and they pass away. So there's been a little bit of a turn of attitude. In the emergency rooms, when people called in initially, they were saying, come into the hospital and, we need to get you quarantined and you can end up on a ventilator. Now the train of thought is stay home if you can stay home and quarantine yourself. Don't go anywhere. Try to stay home, work with your doctor through telehealth and see if you can get your symptoms managed without leaving your home. It's just a lot better process. People heal better in their homes if they're not in respiratory distress. When they get in respiratory distress, they're in trouble and they have to go to the hospital.
So when does a ventilator become an issue for the person who absolutely needs it?
The problem is when that disease process gets that far and folks with a lot of other comorbidities, their body is unable to regenerate the ability to breathe on their own ever again. So it becomes an issue of, do we pull the plug? That's what it comes down to. It's not that the ventilator is the monster, it's the fact that when you have to be put on a ventilator, you're so sick that you're probably past the point of no return. So if you're well enough to say, I don't want a ventilator, don't get a ventilator until you stop breathing on your own.
At that point, there's no denying the ventilator. You have to have it in order to have even a remote shot of beating this thing. Nurse Carrie and her crew are working hard for their patients, trying to keep them safe and trying to keep us all safe by preventing the spread of this disease, while caring for their patients' other health problems that aren't COVID-related. Nurse Carrie does have a message for anyone listening.
Keep up the amazing work banding together as communities and definitely spread the word to protect yourselves and each other and respect the people on the front lines. And I give cheers to Costco, who's now going to require not just their workers to wear masks, but also anyone entering the store has to wear a mask and keep their distance. So a lot of establishments are taking that new policy on, and it's a smart one.
When we return from the break, the Army's X-Tech COVID-19 Ventilator Challenge has brought industry leaders, small businesses, and innovators to find novel solutions to the ventilator problem. Can someone make a cheaper, more reliable, and safer ventilator? One airman and his company think they can. When we return.
This episode of Military Matters is brought to you by Stars and Stripes. Stars and Stripes provides independent news and information to the U.S. military community, including active duty service members, DoD civilians, veterans, contractors, and their families. Unique among Department of Defense authorized news outlets, Stars and Stripes is governed by the principles of the First Amendment. No slants, no agendas, just the news. Go to stripes.com and see the difference for yourself. That's stripes.com. Use promo code podcast. Get 50% off your digital subscription. Use promo code podcast. Get 50% off your digital subscription. Go to stripes.com now. There aren't too many positives that come out of a pandemic, but there are a few. For example, many companies have discovered that their employees are just as productive and perhaps even more so working from home. The post-COVID workplace might have a lot less water cooler conversations and more Skype and Zoom calls. Another positive thing that has come from this pandemic is a priority to innovate aspects of our healthcare industry. One of those innovations is coming directly from the U.S. Army, who put out an industry challenge complete with prize money for the winner and an opportunity to make a huge difference. That challenge was answered by Air Mid Critical Care Products and its CEO, Air Force veteran Michael McGuire.
I joined the Air Force in 1990 and was classified as a cardiopulmonary technician. And in the Air Force, that's a combination of career fields in other services. So it combines respiratory therapy as well as outpatient pulmonary function testing, as well as inpatient cardiology diagnostic testing.
Air Mid Critical Care Products, Inc. was one of 2 companies that received a $100,000 prize through the X-Tech COVID-19 Ventilator Challenge. Their solution was a manual ventilator with the precision and effectiveness of its mechanical counterpart.
The earlier you can provide that breath protection, the better. And typically when people are put on a ventilator, they always typically start with being bagged, if you will, because the process of inducing anesthesia to prepare the patient for the breathing tube insertion and all of that. Patients undergo manual ventilation as that's taking place, and while a ventilator is being prepared, sometimes patients are out in the field and they're ventilated manually until they can get to a hospital where a ventilator can be available.
Manual ventilation carries with it some risk. It can be hard to determine the precise pressure and volumes required for a patient. They're also somewhat of an intermediary till the patient can be provided a mechanical ventilator. AirMed Critical Care went in a less conventional way and combined a manual and mechanical solution.
This is 2 components where you start off a patient with breath size control in manual mode using our volume control bag. And when the patient is moved to a point to where there is a ventilator, then that very same manual ventilator constitutes the core of the ventilator circuit. It's just simply put inside the machine. And then the machine is able to operate it.
Nurse Carrie mentioned earlier that one of the problems with ventilators was that it was hard to get some folks to breathe on their own after they were intubated and the ventilators were doing all the breathing for them. This new solution might have an answer to that problem.
It may be possible for this device to actually constitute a rather sophisticated ventilator that can be used for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and potentially even have the features so that when patients are recovering and are starting to regain their ability to breathe on their own, there are some more sophisticated settings you can put on a mechanical ventilator so that the degree of sedation can be withdrawn to the point to where the patient can start breathing on their own.
Right now, AirMed Critical Care Products is developing the concept prototype for this new ventilator. On top of the challenge of creating a low-cost, safe ventilator solution, they're also addressing the ruggedness of this device. What Army challenge is complete without it having to operate in a field environment?
We considered the ruggedness of this, and we went through some careful contemplative processes to check that every single mechanism associated with the automatic mode was really designed in such a way to be able to handle the harsh operating environment.
The fired up chief will be the first to tell you that COVID-19 does a real number on your lungs. Fortunately for him, he was an active athlete in good health when he got sick. But even then, the damage to his lungs might be irreparable.
Right now, the numbers are pretty sobering. More people die from lung injury right now before COVID than breast and prostate cancer combined. I think it's 74,500 people in the United States die from just lung injury. And if being able to implement early lung protection in that clinical phase where people are being ventilated manually can indeed decrease complications, it doesn't have to be 60%, maybe just 30%, then it could be that we're just caring for these patients much more capably and not inadvertently inducing harm where we may be doing that.
As states begin the process of trying to return to some semblance of life before COVID-19, it's important to remember stories like that of Chief Master Sergeant Lewis, someone who ran 5 miles a day, healthy, and still got sick. But it was a state of health before COVID, and a strong positive mindset that pulled him through.
There are also nurses and doctors out there fighting to keep you and their patients healthy. Not only are they fighting the disease, but they're also fighting to have a voice in the politically charged climate that threatens to silence the science for the rhetoric of politicians. They ask that you do your part, wash your hands, wear a mask when at all possible, and if you think you're sick, don't go to the emergency room unless you're having trouble breathing.
Luckily for us, leaders like Michael McGuire and companies like AirMed Critical Care Products are working hard to create the next generation of ventilators that will be more affordable for our hospitals, safer, and give us all a reason to breathe a healthy sigh of relief, knowing that our last breath on a ventilator will be followed by the first breath on our own.
Don't forget to share this podcast with everyone you know. Also visit stripes.com to get news without the spin. Use promo code PODCAST and get 50% off your digital subscription.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter at StripesMMPod. You can also follow Desmon on Twitter at DPodFarris and myself at RodPodRod. Links are in the show notes. This was a Stars and Stripes production. This episode was executive produced by Benjamin Bateman. We'll see you at the next episode.